Welcome to Electric Libertyland, here on the Lions of Liberty podcast, your weekly shot of culture, comedy, and liberty with your host, Brian McWilliams.
Oh yeah, baby. We're back. We're back by Liberty Lights. Liberty Light. It drinks like a regular beer, but it's got a little less calories. Welcome, guys. This is Lions of Liberty's Electric Libertyland, episode number 22, which means that you could find that at lionsofliberty.com/ELL22. So that'll have all the show notes for the show today, including some videos from my guest, who I'll bring in just a little bit, named Tomasz Kaye. Now, Tomasz, you might know him from his videos. In fact, it's probably what you do know him from. Under Bit Butter is his YouTube name, but he's got videos including George Ought to Help, which is what he is most known for, and some other ones too, which I'll link to in the show notes, talking about the medical institutions and what's going on with the healthcare insurance crisis, etc. And I'm telling you, they're fantastic. He's taken upon himself to create these videos that pass along libertarian concepts in a way that is actually coherent to the everyday viewer. So that's something to hang your hat on, I can say that much. But before I bring in Mr. Tomasz, I do want to talk about a couple of quick things here at the top of the show, including prefacing a story that I will talk about with Tomasz. And it's a story about German kindergartens and a requirement by the state or the government in which they have to basically rat out any parents that don't get advice on vaccinations. And so just a little exercise in confirmation bias. When you do hear that story at the end of the show, I will have a complete wrong understanding of the story, because this is why I want to make this a teaching moment for everybody. Because I could have recorded my side of the conversation, but that's shady, number one. And number two, I think it's kind of funny. So what had happened is, I'm reading this story. Every time I read it initially, I read kindergartens as kindergartners. And once my brain had accepted that was the word, I put it in throughout the article. So I have a very nefarious take on this piece. Now, granted, it is nefarious, underhanded, state-controlled garbage to begin with. But it becomes even worse when you think it's the children that are being asked to rat out their parents. Anyway, there you go. That's a reason to listen all the way to the end of the show, so you can hear me and my goofy misunderstandings of certain things and the confirmation bias of my brain, wherein I made myself believe and did not correct my own reading when I was going through this article. And I must have read it 3 times. Never corrected it. Anyway, if you can't tell, I am feeling a little bit better this episode, thanks to all 0 of you that gave me well wishes or sent me drugs or alcohol to help me through my week-long illness, which was a big pain in my ass. But I am back, and I want to talk about, so at the top of the show here, one thing I do want to talk about, one of 3 things. And the first thing is I want to talk about this insane story that comes out. The Guardian's got it covered, and they're talking about a drug enforcement, basically the DEA, operating outside of our country, and they should not be doing this and not supposed to be doing this. But they were basically saying, well, we're going to be in Honduras. We're going to help, quote unquote, the native forces there in their drug enforcement policies and fighting against the drug war and trying to stop cocaine shipments and everything else. The truth of the matter was that the U.S. was actually leading all of this, and the people, when they actually went in and did interviews later on with the native Honduran law enforcement officials, it became very clear that they were the followers. They had no idea. They were just following along with whatever the U.S. said. The U.S. was leading all these operations. They had people there. They had air transport there. And what happened in this situation is that the DEA lied about a massacre. This is what it's been termed, even though it was only 4 people, but I guess you can still massacre 4 people. I mean, you can massacre 1 person. Anywho, they killed 4 people, and the DEA's official story on what happened was as such. There was a boat that had become disabled. I guess the engine gave out. Maybe they ran out of fuel, and it had a bunch of cocaine on it and a bunch of agents. So both U.S. and Honduran agents were on this boat. I don't know why, but another boat carrying passengers somehow hit them, ran into their disabled boat. I don't know how you could avoid or how you can still hit a boat that's sitting there, but they must have. Maybe the current was strong. I don't know. Upon hitting this boat, the DEA's story was that people on this passenger transport had opened fire on them. They returned fire, killing 4 and really badly injuring a bunch more, including people that have, back pain forever, that a woman had her legs shot up and still is swollen and disfigured. A boy had his wrist, 12-year-old boy had his wrist shattered by the bullet and was only able to keep his hand and mobility in his arm because he had emergency surgery, which was donated. Because a lot of people in Honduras, of course, they don't have the access to the kind of care we have here. So that's the DEA's story. Turns out, and the U.S. has now admitted this, which is shocking in itself. But I guess when there is so much evidence to finally provide evidence, something you don't see in any of the Russia allegations against Trump, but that's neither here nor there. But the U.S. admitted now that the actual occurrence, what happened here was that this boat hit the U.S. or the Honduran ship with the U.S. agents on it. The U.S. agents opened fire first. Once they shot the boat, they shot the boat full of innocent people, shot a bunch of them dead. And then they were assisted by a helicopter that had come in to take these agents and take the drugs away, right? So there's also a gunship, a little gunship with a machine gun on the door, which they then opened fire, and they were shooting not only people on the boat, but people that were fleeing the boat. Innocent people that are desperately trying to swim away from this hail of bullets, which they have no goddamn clue what's happening. They then opened fire on them. I mean, it is a story of horror. And not only does it illustrate everything that's wrong with the war on drugs, people getting wrapped into this violence, and for over what? Over what? People want to snort some substance up their nose. They want to smoke something. So these innocent people are murdered or disfigured. And you take a step farther now. We're so concerned with terrorism. I talked about it last show. I'm talking about it again in this show. We go out of our heads about terrorism, and we forget that it's incidents like this that can cause terrorists to be made as well. We're worried about our actions overseas, which, of course, we should with all the broader military operations going on. But you look at incidents like this, and you think, these people, if your father had been murdered by U.S. drug enforcement agents when he was just trying to get home from work, or your son had been killed, maybe you go and Google some ISIS. Or maybe you go and you try to form your own little splinter cell of terrorism to fight back against any agents we have going on in that country. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility in any way, shape, or form. And in fact, it makes a lot of sense, especially for people that have no other recourse. How would these people strike back against the U.S. government that has murdered their family members for no reason whatsoever? Other than, at this point, they're going to look for the existing organizations. I'm obviously not advocating for that, FBI, who I'm sure is listening, but I'm just saying that is a viable option for these people after this kind of thing happens. So again, ongoing tragedy, lives destroyed, and infinite amount of blowback being provided. And this is just one incident of, I'm sure, hundreds that go on every year. Not necessarily where people are getting murdered in this fashion, but this is the one we heard about. And I guarantee for every one we hear about, there's 15 to 20 that we don't hear about that are as bad or worse. So that's a somber start to the show. Oh, God. Here's one that'll give you a laugh. In a somber way, though, because we all heard now about the stabbings in a Portland rail car, which are horrible. There was a white supremacist who was violent, screaming at a woman of color and basically saying that she was a Muslim and she doesn't pay taxes and get out of her country. And when two gentlemen tried to intervene, which I think we would all hope that we had the balls to do in that situation, if we're being honest, and tried to get him to calm down, the man pulled out a knife and killed two of them. I think there was another woman who was injured. But these men were trying to step in and basically do the right thing. And now, because of this happening, Portland's mayor has said that he wants to basically put a referendum in place to stop any new protests or rallies that are in support of free speech. Anything that could be questionable or considered not on the very progressive side of Portland, because this happened in Portland, which is one of the worst aggressors for idiotic social justice. And if you remember the burrito story and shutting down the burrito stand by the two women, same place. So anyway, but he's tried to put a moratorium on free speech, basically. Because he said because of these attacks, he wants to cancel. He wants the federal government to come in and say that these rallies can't go on. They don't have a right to go on because, that's what we need. We need to quash free speech in order to attack hate speech, I guess. I mean, we can't we just take a step back, by the way, and view this as what it is an incredibly unstable individual who went nuts on a train. That's what happened. You can paint it in any way, shape, or form you like. And people, of course, have already taken the step of saying, well, Trump's got to denounce Muslim violence. And I will say Muslim violence has gone up since the Manchester attacks. I don't know if this distinctly had something to do with that. I know in the UK it has, as people lash out at Muslims, which is not right. It's not forgivable. I can understand it for the stupider part of humanity. Again, people that are looking, just like I said with this Honduras situation. When people are hurt, when loved ones are hurt, and people get angry about it, they try to find some way to lash out, whether that's right or wrong, and that's essentially what's happened. So anyway, Portland's mayor could not have a greater misunderstanding of what should or should not be done here. It's a completely idiotic point of view. Another idiotic point of view, the little girl that was standing up to the bull in Wall Street. So, there's the classic bull statue, and people put this girl, this little freedom girl. So she's standing there now, the fearless girl, I think her name is officially, and she's standing there. And the original creator of the bull is pretty pissed off because he thinks it is insulting to his original piece, which I agree with, actually. I think it is. At the same time, hey, if it's a public space and that's free expression and that's the purview of the people that own it, then fine. You can have your other thing there as well. And then there was a third little installment that was put there today by another artist who was upset about the infringement upon the original artist piece of this fearless girl, which is basically, it was put there. It is essentially just a marketing ruse. It's like, it's a joke. This whole thing's a joke. But of course, the feminists are rallied around it, saying that women should have more emphasis on Wall Street and all this. And so a guy created a little pug. He calls it the pissing pug. And the pissing pug was taking a pee on Fearless Girl's leg, which is funny. And the pug itself was not fantastic. He said intentionally, he goes, I didn't want to make it too nice. I just wanted to make a statement that, this is art. And if you're going to have this, and I can have this other statement about my pug pissing on what I consider to be you pissing on someone else's artistic statement. Naturally, the reaction was immediate. All the feminists got up in arms. All the people that are trying to have sex with the feminists got up in arms, saying that this is an outrage. Which, of course, is the greatest irony. That these assholes who had stepped up and said, well, no, you've got artistic statements and political freedom and your right to free speech. And this is a free speech statement and a powerful statement and has a right to be there. Now, of course, say that the pissing pug has no right to be there and has been removed. And I guarantee you it will not go back there unless this guy creates another little peeing dog or a cat with a yeast infection to shove out there. So again, just the ideology of the left, it just drives me insane because they so constantly are confusing their own points of view with what's right or wrong and placing, these value judgments on what should be either it is okay or it's not okay. You can't have it be only okay when you agree with it. Okay, last thing to hit really quick. Roger Moore died, guys. I know. It's sad. I would venture that he was the worst James Bond. I know. I might get a lot of hate mail. Come at me. Come tweet at me. I'll tweet stomp you all day long. But I would say, even though he made many movies, some of which were okay, some of which were really bad. My God, if you saw Moonraker, that movie is one of the biggest pieces of trash and really signified the start of the downturn of the Bond era at Roger Moore movies because they became all about goofy gadgets, stupid jokes. I mean, it was just like the James Bond movies that are Sean Connery. They had the gadgets, but they were pretty much straightforward spy stories, but with a charming individual who made a joke here and there. The Roger Moore movies basically became the Three Stooges have guns and they're all James Bond. Like, that's what it was. It was a joke. I'm not saying that I'm glad he's dead, by the way. I'm still sad he's dead. But who would have thought that Sean Connery, of all people, would outlive Roger Moore? Sean Connery's got to be like 98 years old. Yet, still living on. And I don't know about you, but I think Sean Connery should finish the deal. I think now that Roger Moore is dead, he should go around Highlander style, killing all the other Bonds off. And for every one, he says, 'cause there can be only one James Bond. Before he murders every one of them. I know, it's not right. I know, it's against the non-aggression principle. But I still think it would be fantastic. There could be only one Sean. Anywho, guys. All right, let's get into the show proper. But before we do, I do want to take a minute just to tell you guys that I do hope you can join our podcast as a supporting member. I want to throw that out there because we're putting out some really fantastic content. And for just $5 a month, you can join on lionsofliberty.com/support. Get access to content early, get access to a special forum we've got for just the supporters of the podcast. And also, you can do, if you're on there for a certain amount of money, we do our special monthly calls. You can ask me what you want to ask me direct to my stupid face. And what is better than that? Nothing in the world. That's what I'd say. Nothing in this world. At least that's what my wife says. All right, guys, we're going to have a quick word from our sponsors, and then we will be right back with Thomas Kaye.
Hey guys, this is Roger Paxton, and if you're fed up with the government running every single aspect of your life, but you're not listening to the Lava Flow podcast yet, then what's wrong with you? Check us out at thelavaflow.com, or just go back to sucking up to the government. The Lava Flow podcast, striking the root every single episode.
This is Chris Spangle, and I am the host of We Are Libertarians, which you can find in iTunes, Google Play, or at wearelibertarians.com. We are a podcast that brings you all of the irreverence that modern politics deserves by examining current events from a libertarian perspective. So please, check us out at wearelibertarians.com.
Hey everyone, the Johnny Rocket Launchpad is Liberty. Each week we strive to bring you the best guests in talk radio. The Johnny Rocket Launchpad delivers weekly interviews of noteworthy politicians, experts, and activists. The Johnny Rocket Launchpad is bringing the party to the Libertarian Party and launching ideas in your direction. Check us out at johnnyrocketlaunchpad.com, and you can hear me, Kurt Nelson, and the beautiful Heather Nixon talk about the ideas of liberty, rock and roll.
Okay, so as promised, we are here with Thomas Kaye. He is very well known within the libertarian community for some of these really great animated videos he's put up on YouTube, such as How Government Solved the Healthcare Crisis, which is the most recent one I watched. The one he's most famous for is George Ought to Help. And You Can Always Leave is another one, known as Bit Butter on YouTube. So you can find him there. And you can also help by supporting what he's doing. And I'll link to this in the show notes, guys, which again, you can find at lionsofliberty.com/ELL22. And but you can link there. You can donate to him on his Patreon type of program and donate to what he's doing. So I want to bring him in. Thomas, thank you so much for coming on Electric Libertyland today.
Hey, it's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, well, it's I wanted to get in a little bit and talk to you about obviously the videos and the work you're doing there, but just to kind of get a genesis of where you're coming from. I know you said you're living in the Netherlands now. You're from England originally. So what has your life path been in a nutshell? And how did you come to be a fan of liberty and become a voice for libertarian thought?
Okay, so those different parts don't tie into each other very well, but I'll do my best. So my background, I studied painting, fine art painting, in Newcastle. After I graduated, I taught myself web development, moved to London. Between those times, I met my then girlfriend on a study exchange to the Netherlands. And so we lived together for a while in London. Tried that for a while. It didn't work out. It's too smelly and dirty and violent. And so then, we thought, okay, we've tried England. The fair thing to do next is to see how it is in the Netherlands. And so we moved over there, or over here rather. And I've been here ever since.
How long ago was that? So how many years have you been in the Netherlands now?
13, 14 years.
Wow,
like
so
that.
A while, yeah.
Yeah, I like it here. It's nice.
It seems like a lovely place. I will say that.
The biking. The biking's the big thing for me. I really like that you can get anywhere you need to go on a bike without danger of being run over or anything like that. That's really nice.
Yeah, I'd say, I went to China, and it's the opposite there. You can bike everywhere, but you're pretty much always in danger of being run over. Like, it was uncanny. You'd walk along. I mean, I swear, I was in Shanghai, Beijing, and Xi'an, and everywhere there's hundreds of bicyclists, and the cars just don't care. They just turn when they're going to turn, and it's just like, I can't believe every day that people aren't just mauled horribly. And maybe they are. I don't know.
Sure they are.
Right.
The first week my girlfriend arrived in London when we went to move there. She's grown up in the Netherlands and she's used to biking here, and so the first thing she did there was got a cheap secondhand bike, and she'd got a job, and she decided, okay, I'm just going to bike to work. And I was like, no, don't do it. No, it'll be fine. I don't need a helmet or anything. And then kind of 2 minutes out of the door, she was rear-ended by a car. She was fine, but it shook up. Yeah, it's just dangerous.
Yeah, that's, it's like one of those things. You're like, oh, are you okay? But also, you do get a deep sense of "I told you so" satisfaction in those moments.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad she was okay.
Well, of course, yeah. So okay, so then how? Now you're, in England, I don't know. So when did your love affair, I guess, with libertarian thought start to play a part in your life? Was this when you were in England, or did this kind of start cropping up in the Netherlands more?
It was later on. I'd already moved, but me being in the Netherlands perhaps didn't play into that in a very obvious way, except for maybe it's cheaper to live here, or it is for me. So that meant I had more kind of discretionary time. I was freelancing at the time. So with that time, one of the things I did was make YouTube videos and, reply to other people making YouTube videos. And back then, my big interest was atheology or atheism, especially atheism and Christianity, the discussion surrounding those topics. Mm-hmm. So I made a whole bunch of videos, and on my Bitbutter channel, you can see those. They're the very first ones from ages ago. Mm-hmm. And that was really nice. I was really I felt like I was learning a lot, and it was a really stimulating kind of community to be part of. And then my subscriber base was growing, and then one guy asked me what I thought about this one particular video that he'd seen, and that video was called something like "The State is a Death Threat." It was, completely provocative title, and so I watched that, and it made the case that every law that exists is ultimately a threat of violence that's maintained against anyone in the territory, and it's not only a threat of violence, but a threat of violence which will, if in the case of non-compliance, it will be escalated until the agents of the state will sooner see you dead than let you escape, the consequences of your non-compliance. And that was a way that I hadn't considered things before, and it was, for me, it made it very urgent for me to look into this more closely, because this is kind of an alarming thought if you haven't seen it presented that way before.
Yeah. You were quote unquote, I hate to use this phrase, you were quote unquote woke, as people like to say, and we all like to look down on that phrase. But it's an apt way of putting it.
No, I was red pilled.
That also worked.
yeah, one or the other. And so then that began my kind of quest to figure out as much as I could about this topic. And initially it was. So that was a really interesting time for me. I benefited an awful lot from the Mises.org website and all the materials they have available there. Mm-hmm. And it was, at the same time, it's kind of disappointing, because the people who I'd kind of come to know through like the atheism community, and who in my mind were at least more able than most to do the whole critical thinking thing. Right. They were kind of flatly dismissive of the whole idea. I had a video called "Let's Talk About the State" when I was first getting into this kind of thing, and the response was like, "No, this is nonsense," libertarian nonsense.
Well, I think you hit on a key there. It is interesting when you bring the concept to so many people who are just used to it. I mean, and it is a very apt way to compare it to people that are brought up with a certain religion. You know, if you're raised with that religion, this concept of, okay, God is there, God exists. This is the reason that these things are the way they are. And he designed it this way and it all makes sense. And then you look at the way people are raised with this. I mean, essentially it is a religion, in many ways, the worship of government, especially on the left. You don't know any other way to think about the world. And when you're presented with that other option, it is something where, you know, some people are going to flat out reject it just because it is questioning the very, I guess, their identity and the way in which they understand the world in which they live.
Right. I think it can be a really uncomfortable thing. And like back then, I would probably be quite comfortable with kind of, you know, drawing a very clear comparison with religion. Now, I think I'd prefer to say that a lot of religious people kind of have that kind of mode of basically default assumptions about the world. Other religious people come to it, I'm sure, through careful thought, and they've kind of I think they've made a mistake, but in the vast majority of cases with statism and with religion, it's a kind of default belief that's not carefully examined, I believe.
Yes, I agree completely, and it's something where, I mean, people understand, I think a lot of people, if they actually look at the history of religions and the way these things have rolled out, that religions were essentially, and I'm sorry to all the religious people, because, you know, it's funny, a lot of libertarians are in fact religious, which is interesting, but, you know, when you really look at it, it's all a method of control, in my personal opinion. And, you know, you can argue that maybe on some level, society needed certain laws. I personally believe that the natural order works itself out, wherein most of the tenets that are pushed forward by Catholicism or Judaism or any of these other religions that essentially order what you should and should not do were things that did not need to necessarily be laid out anyway, because a society needs them to function. So de facto, they are going to occur. But, you know, it's a method of control, and the state's method of control and the religious method of control are overlapping in so many different ways. You know, to find salvation, you have to do this, and this, or to maintain your role in society and not be thrown into prison, as you'd reference Sawyer, by not complying to the laws or complying to the taxation. You know, this coercive government threat of we will take away your freedom should you not follow these laws. So it's all the same basic structure. And I think the more you look into it, the more you come to understand that.
Yeah. So the longer I've been in the liberty community, and the more often I've come across people who are usually Roman Catholics and libertarians or anarcho-capitalists, the more I feel my attitude towards religion has softened. Like my animosity to religion has softened because of those people who, you know, I learn a lot from these people. They're very smart. One in particular I'm thinking of is Clark Hatt on Twitter. I don't know if you know him.
No, I'll have to look him up. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, look him up. He's interesting. And so, yeah, I think they're making a mistake. I think that their beliefs about, you know, the creator of the universe or the existence of a creator of the universe are mistaken. But I can very well believe that there might be advantages to having for a community to have this very strongly held shared belief that it might ease cooperation, might ease coordination on these kind of edge cases, which otherwise might have resulted in conflict, and that you can have a kind of cohesion that otherwise wouldn't be there, which perhaps enables that society to accomplish other things. And this, I suppose, this starts to get into the NRX style of thinking, or the alt-right stuff even. I think it's not completely nonsense. I think there are some interesting ideas in there. And so
I can see where you're
links to that.
Yeah, I agree with some of the things that are said, you know, like the Richard Spencers of the world and that kind of thing. With, you know, you do have an identifier in your community and you like-mindedness and certain things in that regard. But at the same time, it's interesting when you were just talking about this, and there was a recent story that I had posted in our forum group, which for our listeners, you can find on Facebook. Just type in Lions of Liberty Forum, and we'll add you in there if you don't look too crazy. But I posted a story about Portland, and you know, Portland. I don't know how much news you get about Portland in the Netherlands, but it's just a den of social justice warriors, essentially. And the most recent triumph for them was that they shut down. These two white women had a burrito shop which looked like a great burrito shop, but they shut them down because these women said, "Oh, we were in Mexico and we saw this great burrito or this tortilla recipe, and we brought it back here." And they were like, cultural appropriation," and they shut them down. So. Yeah. But the thing for me is kind of like you're saying is you need these common identifiers or these common beliefs in which to foster a better society, get cooperation. And that's where, just going off on a tangent here, this whole, crying cultural appropriation drives me absolutely insane, because you look at cultural appropriation, essentially what it is just taking something that's an attractive feature of another society and adopting it within your own. And isn't this basically what society has been built on throughout the ages, and trade has been tourism and advancements in society? Like, they're based on these things. If we didn't culturally appropriate, we would all be stagnant. And also we would be in even more of a constant state of war than we are right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that you can't help but notice, I think, is that the same people who are so critical of what they perceive as white culture are so hostile to the idea of whites appropriating elements from other cultures. What's that about?
Right. Exactly.
You know this meme with the guy with the 2 red buttons and he's sweating?
Yeah. I love that meme.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, but no, exactly. It's like, you can't say white culture is the worst and then put it in a box and then say now you're not allowed to change.
Yeah,
you're the worst, but God forbid you evolve in any way. The logic is not quite there in so many of these progressive ideologies that are adopted and that they're pushing out there constantly via every possible means. And that's why let's get to the you're more into your videos. Then this is a perfect segue because social media has become such a powerful tool. I mean, look, the conservative movement's got theirs, libertarians, we're putting our memes out there too. But I think one of the biggest challenges that libertarianism faces, and whether you're an ANCAP or a MINCAP or you're a minarchist, whatever it is, whatever it is, it's still a very huge hurdle, I find, for most people to get into it. Like, you have to really put the effort in to understand economics on some level. You have to understand a lot of the different, the aspects of government control, and people are too lazy to do that. And that's where I feel like in today's world, where the easiest thing to do is just say, hey, just watch this video. It's a minute long. I'll put it on your Facebook page. It's videos like the ones that you're doing that are so helpful. And I'm curious to see what, the reaction you've gotten. Obviously, it's been very popular, but was that part of the impetus in creating it, to say, I need something to communicate and make this simpler for people to understand? Because you do a great job of it in the videos.
Thanks. Kind of. So the video I watched that initially got me interested in this stuff is no longer online. And I noticed it had a really big effect on me. But at the same time, I realized that the way it was presented, it was very uncompromising, made no concessions to, making the viewer feel even at all comfortable. Yeah. It was not seductive at all. That works fine for me. I had the idea that it might not work fine for others. And I knew that I had some skills in putting together graphics and so on. And I thought I could do kind of an iteration on this idea. Like, I could package a very similar message in a way that would probably reach more people. That was my, that's why I started it, without an expectation of really how many it would reach. Only that it would be good if it reached more than this one video that I'd seen, because I wanted more people to see it. I was, I'm really interested in, what I take to be the truth, and I kind of project that interest on other people too. I assume people are interested in finding out what's true, and that's a big motivator for me to try and to produce these things to help people in that project. Yeah.
Now, when you created it, what was your target audience? Just anywhere all over the world? Were you thinking specifically, I want to create these to reach people in the region you're in now, or you're just saying, yes, as at the internet, obviously there's no boundaries, so just throwing it out there and hoping it goes viral?
Yeah, pretty much. So by default, the first audience is the Anglosphere online.
Yeah.
And I made no attempt to make it culturally neutral beyond that scope. So I could have done, I could have looked at how best to present these ideas to a Chinese audience, let's say.
Yeah.
But no, I just kind of went for the lowest hanging fruit on the tree, and trying to communicate to the kind of audience that I was already speaking to online, which predominantly are people from the US, as it happens, but in the English-speaking world in general.
Yeah. Well, the one I'd said, the reason I reached out to you initially, because it was, and it's shame on me, it was the first video I'd seen that you did was the healthcare video, but I just, it just was so succinctly put. And again, it touched on so many of these things that people don't get into when you get into arguments about healthcare, because obviously that was a big topic. It's an ongoing topic in the United States right now. Obviously the Netherlands, I believe you guys have the socialized healthcare, as does England. And you look at all the arguments for and against, but people forget the genesis of how did we get to this point. And you did a great job in that video specifically of calling out how there were these, insurance had existed and very capably through fraternal organizations and through other groups that you could join before the government got involved and essentially created the crisis and created these skyrocketing prices, and the AMA got involved and became this, having a monopoly on the licensing, which pushed people out, and which is something that, I don't know if you're familiar with that. Well, you probably know of Rand Paul.
Sure.
But he also talks about that quite a bit. And it's interesting just to see that laid out, because people they don't know. And it harkens to what we spoke to earlier. They've been taught that insurance exists, especially the new generation. Insurance exists and healthcare is incredibly expensive and there's nothing we can do about it. So government has to take over.
Yeah. There's a bunch of connected beliefs that I come across quite often there, that there's just something, there's something unique about all of the industries that the state happens to either monopolize or heavily license that makes them somehow, in contradiction to all the other industries, they just get more expensive.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what advances we have, what technological advances come about that might make things faster. No, exactly right.
Yeah, and there's all kinds of ad hoc stories about why that might be the case for medicine. The technology is so much better now, blah blah blah. But yeah, I was really happy to come across this essay by Roderick Long that the video is based on. The script is almost verbatim kind of translation of that essay.
So, Robert, if you're listening to this, sue his balls off.
I asked him. He said he was okay with it. But then he couldn't really say anything else given his position on copyright, so that's okay.
Good.
But yeah, I was really happy to come across that essay because it's also a history that I wasn't aware of, and also wasn't aware of the kind of the developments that happened in Britain during that time either, where I'm from. And that's been very interesting. It's very different kind of video to George Ought to Help. George Ought to Help is kind of it's pretty much a bludgeon. You can't. It's a kind of cognitive dissonance engine.
Yeah.
In my view, the healthcare one is a little bit different. It tells a story, it's a historical story. There's all kinds of ways of interpreting it, but I've been very happy with the response to that one too. I think a very different type of person is different types of people have expressed gratefulness for being shown this story. And it's not a drop dead watertight argument for libertarianism or deregulation of the medical industry, but I think reasonable people, it resonates with them.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, is that it's the great thing about these videos again is it provides an in a lot of ways. And people, in talking to so many people about libertarianism, you can't just dive in and lay out and be like, everything needs to be deregulated. The government, we don't need the government. It can all be done, because they can't grasp it. They're just immediately going to dismiss you as saying, this is crazy. You're a fool. You just want complete anarchy and it'll never work. Society will crumble. But if you get people to open up to one point, then it is a very slippery slope in a good way. Then, at least from what I found in talking to people, is once you can get them to acknowledge one point and you say, okay, now extrapolate from there. If you acknowledge this one point, you can see how these other things would work, and you can see how government has not made things better, but in fact has made things worse. So it's a great way to get a foot in the door for libertarianism. And again, by not putting too much in there, by not making it so complex and diving into all sorts of theory on which people are just going to tune it out, you accomplish far more. You accomplish more by doing less, essentially.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm really interested in kind of investigating that space, and kind of refining that approach.
Mm-hmm.
The latest thing I did was a website called exploreistaxationtheft.com.
Oh, okay, which I will link to in the show notes.
Oh, great! So it's a kind of interactive conversation. You know these kind of old choose your own adventure books.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah, those things. So it's kind of that. It takes its cue from that for the format of the thing. So it presents you with a little bit of text, and it asks you a question, and you have a multiple choice response available to you, and then it goes on, and so it's very tightly focused on the question of whether taxation is theft, whether it's reasonable or defensible to describe it that way. And so what I've done is I've tried to represent all the biggest statist objections to the idea, and the libertarian answers to those. And that's been really interesting to make. Also for me, I feel as though my views on the whole subject have become a bit more nuanced and a bit more robust as well.
That is, I'd love to do a little bit more if I had gotten more time. And I think, as you had cited earlier, the reason you started making these videos, you had a little bit more money and more time to do it. I'm trying to get both of those things. But it is true. You do learn a lot more when you have the onus of creating something on top of you. Then you do look a lot more into specific topics and ways of thinking about it. And, I myself, I'm bandying about this idea of creating like a comedy, about social justice warriors that would be a skit, just run on this show or interstitially until I could actually film it. But it makes you think about ways you say, okay, how am I going to reach people? Because I don't want to make this just for a libertarian audience. I want to make this something that would be attractive to other people. So it can't be too dismissive or snide. It can't be too inside ball. And so you really have to do a lot of research and find ways in which to connect with people on a level you might not have initially thought about.
Yeah, absolutely. It reminds me a bit about that idea from Nassim Taleb, I believe. The idea of having skin in the game. Right. That this is a super important thing to have to produce anything of value. That without being personally invested in it somehow, you're not motivated enough to look into it.
You just half-ass it.
Yeah, exactly. You don't do your due diligence. You don't research it properly. Yeah,
right, exactly.
There's a lot to say for that.
And I had, by the way, gone out of my way to properly research all about the Libertarian Alliance in Denmark because I, for some reason, thought you were in Copenhagen. So I spent about half an hour redoing all this deep research into the wrong country. But let's let you know. So, skin in the game. I did my duty.
Skin in the wrong game.
Yeah, exactly. That's like the title of my biography, and also how I got STDs. Skin in the wrong game. By the way, so tell me real quick, because I want to get into a little bit of discussion into Trump's comments about NATO or non-comments about NATO, I guess, and demanding people pay their fair share in NATO, and also this German kindergartner's story before we finish up. But I do want to hear a little bit about, is there any libertarian community in the Netherlands that you're a part of? Is it tiny? Is it growing? Is it, what's the status of libertarianism over there?
It exists and it's small, and I hope it's growing. So recently, in the last couple of weeks, in fact, I met up with the guys from the Libertarian Party over here.
Mm-hmm. Are they just called the Libertarian Party there, or is it a specific name?
It's like the Dutch translation of that, so it's Libertarische Partij, LP. It's an abbreviation. And yeah, there's a bunch of good guys working on that. And I'm hoping that we can work together somehow. So my interest isn't really in kind of traditional political victories, but I think a party can be a very useful platform for consciousness raising. So that's kind of my angle to see whether that's kind of we can help each other that way.
Yeah, I mean, here in the U.S., the Libertarian Party obviously this year had their best chance in ages to actually make a mark, and they failed miserably by putting out a truly terrible candidate. I'm not sure how much you were paying attention to it, but
a little bit.
Yeah,
I saw the memes.
Oh, he is my God, man, he was terrible. But they also, I just realized a member of our forum had sent me a Facebook message because I do public relations as my main career. And for a while, I was looking at the Libertarian Party and all of this just dumb crap they would be doing, just misstep after misstep and missing opportunities to get out there and comment during news cycles. It's like you've got 3 parties running and there's almost no comment from the Libertarian Party. So I was thinking, oh God, they really should have somebody in the PR side. And I was just told that they finally are looking to actually hire a public relations liaison or a press agent. And it was just shocking to me that all this time they haven't had one. And like I said, the Libertarian platform, like I am not even an official member of the party, nor would I probably elect to be in most circumstances, but it is useful. And you do have, especially when it comes to national media, you do have a better chance of garnering national media and getting those interviews if you do have an official party designation.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's the same thing here. I'm also not a member of the LP in the Netherlands. Yeah. And right now they're so small. I believe that this is like, the dedicated PR person is. I'm guessing they don't have that.
Yeah, probably not.
They'll correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah.
They'll send you an angry email.
Yeah.
Any day now. All right. Well, let's tell you what. This was awesome. So let's move on. I want to hit a couple of these stories. So why don't we talk about real quick this Trump's latest statement about NATO? I mean, obviously he had just come and made a trip to the Middle East in which he would not. He said he's like, I'm not going to come and harangue you guys about your issues about personal rights or human. God, why am I blanking on how to say this word? I'm just completely. Hold on. I'm just going to re-record this part because I can't. Human rights. God damn it. Sometimes, man, my brain. All right. So I do want to get into this a little bit before we move on to anything else. Is talk about Trump and his statements upon NATO. And essentially what happened was Trump was in the Middle East and he had made some statements, met with Saudi Arabia, got a nice medal and touched a glowing orb. And he refused to say that he was going to come down hard on any human rights violations, which is hilarious, of course, because the man goes out of his way to launch missiles against Syria and Assad when he allegedly gassed his own people. And yet we're giving $110 billion in weapons to Saudi Arabia, which also continues to hang people and stone women to death and all sorts of horrible things. But regardless, on NATO, he'd made some statements and basically during this speech had called out the NATO members and said, you need to pay your fair share, which I believe is 2% of a gross domestic product. And also said, he didn't say that he had supported this U.S. Article 5 commitment to NATO, which essentially means when one nation is attacked, all nations have to respond equally to that attack. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Trump's NATO stance. And, are people over there, do people in Europe really give a crap, or is it just all political gamesmanship right now?
They do. I like that. I mean, among the people, among my friends on Facebook, like the general, I mean, among the people I've met face to face, I have a lot of libertarian friends too, who I haven't. Among my actual real life friends, I think like the general attitude is Obama was great, Trump is the devil. It just, it doesn't sit very well with me. They both, in my view, they're both pretty awful.
Yep. Yeah, I'm with you there.
So it's like that. But I don't get the idea that people here are really closely following much of what Trump is doing right now. So
it's not even just as a social game, because here it's almost always anything that goes on. It's like people rush to Facebook immediately to, it's virtue signaling in a lot of ways just to make sure they get likes for bashing Trump. But it's like Facebook and other social media have almost become something I have to avoid like the plague because it's so frustrating to me because they're focusing on the wrong things for the most part anyway. It's the stuff that doesn't matter.
Yeah, so I guess, the nature of Facebook makes it difficult to really draw any conclusions for this kind of thing because I don't really know what the algorithms are showing me. True. But yeah, what I'm noticing is that the stuff I read about the terrible thing that Trump has done, on the wider internet, is not really reflected very strongly in the friends I have on Facebook. Let's put it that way. But there is this just kind of general simmering background hatred. It's more like that.
Yeah, I think regardless, I think even if Trump hadn't won the election, though, he's a man that's very easy to hate. I mean, if we're being perfectly honest, which is, again, shocking that the man has become president. And I would argue personally, now, there's a lot of split libertarian thought on whether or not Hillary would be better or worse than Trump, because at least I guess the argument was, well, Hillary would be maybe even worse. But then at least, we'd have a shot at coming back and having a libertarian or a different conservative that might be more closer to libertarian values in office. Meanwhile, Trump is so, horrible. And now it's just going to be another dyed in the wool piece of crap Democrat that's going to take over in 4 years or something like that. Yeah.
I was following those discussions as they were happening too. And I guess my feeling was that Trump was probably the lesser evil.
Yeah.
But nobody knows. And there was this great piece by Brian Kaplan at the time, I think it was, talking about how, or maybe it's an older piece, but he was talking anyway about how he doesn't vote. And the crux of it was, it's, you invest part of yourself in the outcome.
Yeah.
And it's absolutely not worth it.
No, exactly. Well, and everybody wants to win. And this was something when I was going door to door for Ron Paul back in 2008. In what was an exercise in futility, essentially, but still, but the thing I found more often than not was that people are invested, and they are, they consider their vote, like they tie it so personally to who they are. And everybody wants to win. And nobody wants to be the guy that is on the losing side and then has to face their friends who voted for the winner. And so, there is so much tied into that and so much personal pride. And all these Hillary supporters were so deeply hurt, deeply hurt when their candidate lost, that they can never let it go ever. And they never will.
Yeah. On the other hand, they have the consolation now of being able to be completely free in their criticism of Trump.
Yep.
They have that luxury. On the other hand, they would have been having to stick up for whatever terrible thing Hillary was doing right now.
Right, exactly. And that's the way we've seen it. I mean, as you said, Obama was equally terrible. And it's just amazing to see so many people cited Obama as, he's one of the greatest presidents in history. And I said, how? He continued to have all of these aggressive wars against overseas. He involved us in even more undeclared wars. And also, this massive NSA spying scandal, which was uncovered both in England and here, and, touched in Germany and all these places. How exactly, other than this terrible Obamacare bill, which it's still not universal health care and made everybody's health insurance vastly more expensive, what exactly did the man do?
He won a prize, right?
In his first 2 weeks in office. Then he went and bombed the Middle East. It boggles the mind what the mental gymnastics people can do in order to qualify and keep somebody in the right corner of their brain so they can feel good about themselves.
Yeah, this has been a big source of disappointment in my Facebook friends, I have to say. Yeah,
most definitely.
I've got to say, he's probably the most charismatic president I know of.
Obama?
I'll give him that. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. He was a really incredibly gifted orator. And he was, I give it to him. He was a very likable guy. And even doing, I don't know if I was a fan of him doing shows like, I don't know if you're familiar with Zach Galifianakis' show Between Two Ferns.
No.
It's like a comedy show. It's funny if you want to check it out, but it's like this very informal, goofy interview with a comedian. And he just sits down between literally two ferns and a black stage, black curtain in the background. And the president of the United States had sat down and done this interview with him, which on one level you say, okay, well, it's good to see a president being approachable, I guess. But on the other level, you say, shouldn't the president be above this type of goofiness? I mean, you're arguably the most powerful man in the world. What the hell are you doing? Don't you have better things to do?
Yeah. Like Trump on Twitter, I suppose.
Right. Yeah, exactly. God, Trump's Twitter, man. I got to say, that is entertaining. I mean, it's ridiculous, but it is entertaining. All right, let's throw one more topic I want to hit with you, and then we'll wrap it up. I don't want to keep you too long because I know it's later there. It's pushing 8:00, and you probably have a nice dinner waiting for you.
I've eaten. I'm fine. I'm good.
Look at you. Good job. Yeah, I get that brain fuel for this intense conversation.
Absolutely. So this NATO thing, right? So the idea was if I understood it correctly, he'd refused to explicitly endorse this Article 5, right? So he was not reaffirming this idea that the US would kind of leap to the defense or to join the fray with any NATO member that was in any kind of conflict, right?
Correct. And it's not like he went out and was like, F Article 5. He just didn't explicitly say it. And I guess it's the first time a president hasn't been like, yes, we're committed to this Article 5 thing. So I don't know. The argument, I guess, is this all a bunch of furor over nothing, or is it actually an intentional omission by Trump as kind of a very subtle threat if people don't pay their fair share, which agreed, they should pay. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous that, you can't put forward the 2% that these other factions of NATO had agreed to. But I mean, that's the big debate, is whether or not people should give a damn about it. I personally don't think that it's anything that should be given a damn about. I think that there's no way we're going to be pulling out of NATO or change anything there because too much of the politics are involved in it, and they could start not only in rail wars, but this is the kind of thing where it could start trade wars additionally as they try to leverage economics into the game. I think if we tried to threaten to pull out.
Yeah, I guess with Trump, it's always difficult to say. You have this. I think it was Scott Adams who kind of popularized this idea of 4D chess.
Yes, yeah, I'm glad you read that, man. That blog is great.
Yeah, it's good. It's very interesting. And recently, I saw someone else kind of mockingly doing a takeoff of that, saying that Trump is doing 6-dimensional Ludo right now. I thought that was very nice. But yeah, so who knows? But I suppose from my perspective. Anything that weakens NATO or that destabilizes it somehow is probably a good thing. In the sense that it seems like a huge. The main thing is it seems like a huge moral hazard to have this kind of arrangement. Where if any of the member countries get into a conflict, that they can count on the support of the others. Yeah. So if you have that kind of arrangement, you've essentially lowered the cost of being belligerent and entering conflicts, and you've kind of removed some of the incentive to be diplomatic in your dealings with other countries. So it seems like an arrangement that's going to lead to more war.
Right.
So I mean, this is kind of a very quick, superficial kind of analysis of the thing, but I have trouble seeing how that couldn't be the case.
No, it's very true. And it's, here you go. Here's a title for a video that could tie in. It's because this reminds you of when you see a woman go to a bar, or a little kid with a big brother, and, she's a loudmouth and she's drunk and she's starting fights because she knows her boyfriend's going to back her up. And you could, is your girlfriend a bitch? There's your next video title. Tying into NATO and and how it works to have Big Brother there to bail you out all the time. But no, you make an excellent point. And Rand Paul had said during a recent, they were having a hearing about whether or not the UN should let in Montenegro. And of course, Montenegro and Serbia, there's been a lot of war ongoing. And he goes, well, this is a tiny country. And if we let them into NATO, then what's going to happen? Okay, if they start a war again, as they're wont to do, then now we've got to go and bail them out. This country of, 3 million people, and now we got to send our whole military over there. So he makes a very salient point, though, and it's just like what you're talking about. The benefit to the United States is arguably nil for most of the countries that are in NATO. Meanwhile, the benefit for them to be belligerent or not have to worry so much about the consequence of their actions is negated by the fact that they've got Big Brother US there or England or any of these other countries that can step in and bail them out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think your assessment's quite on.
Yeah, great.
All right, so let's hit this last story I want to talk about is in Germany. So this is Germany's going to pass a new law this week, and it's going to oblige kindergartners to inform the authorities if their parents fail to provide evidence that they've received advice from the doctor on vaccinating their children. Which there's a lot of questions being brought up here. Number one, are the kindergartners going to have to demand some sort of paperwork to document this? Like, it's very confusing how this is actually going to play out. But apparently, the teachers are going to be asking the kids when they come into school, did your parents give you provide evidence that their doctor told them about vaccines and have you been vaccinated? Something like that. And if they say no, it is a 2,500 euro penalty, which is quite a good amount of money to have not properly told your child, which, by the way, why would you not just lie to the kid anyway? Be like, yeah, I went to the doctor, But this kind of law, though, it is, I don't want to take all the talking points. So let me get your take on it first, and then I'll weigh in. Because otherwise I'm going to talk for 5 minutes, and then you're going to be like, yup, and that'll be that.
Yeah, maybe. So I have a friend living in Germany, a good friend, who has a kid of an age that this is relevant to, and so he tells me about what life is like there right now. He's living in Berlin, and that's really interesting to hear about. Like, culturally, there are some differences between the Netherlands and Germany, or at least between Rotterdam and Berlin, where he is. And one of the big ones is that, which is part of why this story is so surprising to me. One of the big ones is that Germans living, at least in Berlin, are very sensitive, so the report goes, to any attempt to surveil, to any attempt to keep tabs on them. Cash is really important there. Many places you can't pay with a card at all.
Really, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and this makes a lot of sense with respect to how things were in the Cold War period. I don't know how much you know about that, but there's a fantastic film called The Lives of Others. Have you seen that?
No, I'm not familiar with it at all.
It's a really great film. It's about 1984 East Berlin, what things were like there, and it's about a member of the secret police surveilling some people in his life. Anyway, surveillance was a big thing back then, and it was a pretty terrible time. And you had informants wrecking all kinds of people's lives. So the idea that this law is going to pass, or it is passed, is really, it seems to go against all that, and it makes me wonder how that's happened. Because it seems to be like, okay, surveillance is really terrible, but, ratting on your neighbors in this instance is okay.
Right. And not even ratting on your neighbors. You're basically asking your own children to rat you out to the government and making them spies and complicit. And I understand it's like so many laws that pass and you say, how the hell did this thing get pushed through? But it's all in the guise of safety and in the guise of, we have to protect against this disease. For example, here they're using measles, chickenpox, mumps, as the reason, because as people are not vaccinating their children, these things are spreading, which is a fact. I don't argue that. And obviously within the libertarian community, this is an ongoing debate as whether or not you're violating, the property rights of others by not vaccinating your child, because then you can make them sick. But I don't know where you fall on this. I feel, if you don't want to vaccinate your kid, you don't have to. I'm going to, personally. Yeah. But if you don't, your kid gets sick. Well, tough nuts.
To me, it's solved by allowing complete freedom of association and dissociation.
Right. Exactly.
Which we don't have now, which is where all the conflict comes from, I think.
Right. And
so
also,
in a sense, I'm kind of as part of a broader solution, or a broader status quo, I would be happy with the prospect of kindergartens, for instance, refusing entry to non-vaccinated kids. My kid is not vaccinated. I'll mention that. So it's like, I think this is a kind of humane way of dealing with it. Some kindergartens will be okay with that, and others won't.
Right, and that's where we were talking about. We were talking about as a country lately. We've been talking about school choice because one of Trump's nominees, or the current Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos. I'm saying her name wrong every time, but she is a proponent of school choice, as am I, as are you, I'm sure. And yeah, exactly right. If you don't want, if the issue becomes far less if you don't have just monolithic public institutions where all the children are funneled in there. If you have school choice, you've got schools that say, no, you have to be vaccinated to come here. If you don't want to do that, you're going to have another choice for a school that does not demand that. But right now, because it's such an emphasis on public education and they don't have the voucher system in place yet, or these other options, it becomes more of an issue. So, but getting back to this, just the general concept is, it's shocking how much you can do under the guise of safety, where people are willing to sign away so much of their privacy. And I just think, just on a level though, to say to people's children though, you have to rat out your parents, and we're going to explicitly ask you to spy and inquire about your parents, is a whole nother level of totalitarianism and control that I've never seen any bill like this that I can think of.
Yeah, maybe I misread it or misunderstood, but in my impression was that it was the kindergartens who would ask the parents for some kind of proof that they had been witness to the advice from the doctor. And the advice from the doctor is follow the vaccination program, of course. And then, if they don't, and the trick is if they hear the advice and don't follow it, then they get fined.
Okay, maybe I'm interpreting this wrong. That is a possibility.
So on this interpretation, it's there's still ratting out happening, but it's the kindergartens ratting out the parents.
Right. Okay.
So they're compelled to tell the authorities if anyone enrolls who cannot produce the proof that this advice was given. It's all a bit involved. They found an interesting way around doing that.
I totally did read this article wrong. I've been upset about nothing. Well, I'm still upset about something appropriate, but yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. The children are not ratting out their parents.
Yeah. Well, it's a little bit better, right?
slightly better. But yeah, now the kindergartens, right, have to provide evidence, which I guess they'll have to say, yeah, here's my doctor's note, or are they going to send him a quiz? The kindergarten's going to quiz. I don't know. It's all still very, very questionable. And puzzling.
I guess they have a stamp in there. The doctor puts a stamp on there, and then they show them this. This thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just funny though that it's not mandating that they have to vaccinate the children though.
No,
it's just you get the advice. So it's almost one of those things where you question what's it going to achieve. I think most people that aren't getting vaccinated probably already have their minds made up and they know the basic benefits of vaccination and the potential drawbacks of it. So just providing a fine that says you have to get this talking to seems a bit arbitrary.
Yeah, I guess some kind of some economists or politicians would kind of frame it in terms of a nudge, but this is a nudge to get people to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So if people are there's some subset of people who are just too lazy or can't be bothered even looking into it to get it sorted out, then this will be the nudge that makes them do it. But yeah, it's pretty abhorrent to me.
Yeah, I agreed. Well, I'll finish up there, and thank you. I mean, Thomas, this has been awesome. I will say that I really enjoyed talking to you. I'm sure our audience has as well, and I would love to have you back on later time as well. If you got some new videos, make sure to shoot those to me, and I'm gladly share them on our Facebook forum. And also just if there's anything going on in your neck of the world, let's get you back on here and chat about it.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on. I'll definitely let you know.
And tell everybody real quick so they can find all of your websites, where they can donate to you, and all of that good stuff.
Okay, the two most important URLs are georgeoughttohelp.com. That's where I have all my main films and a bunch of articles. The other important one is patreon.com/Tomasz Kaye. So that's TOMASZ
That's a Z for us Americans.
Yeah, sorry.
I don't want them to type in Z at the end and then be very confused. Yeah, Thomas Z, guys.
Yeah, without an H and with a Z. Yeah.
Yes. All right, great. And again, I'll link to these in the show notes as well, guys, but I know most of you are too lazy to visit them. So I'm just going to give a quick shout out to remind you guys to please do follow us on Twitter at Lions of Liberty. I'll also link to Thomas's Twitter profile as well in the show notes. Follow us on Facebook, like our page, join the forum. And again, you can support our podcast if you so choose, including getting that gives you access to exclusive content that we put out. That's simple. Go to lionsofliberty.com/support. We've got our own little Podbean program you can join. We do all sorts of fun things. We're going to be doing a very special recording of a Mystery Science Theater type of take on They Live upcoming, guys. So that's going to be really fun. We're going to be recording that on the 8th. Otherwise, follow Thomas and listen to other shows. So I'll wrap it on that. From me, Brian McWilliams, from Thomas Kaye over there in the Netherlands, from the Lions of Liberty, and from Electric Libertyland, guys, always stay plugged in to Liberty.